spent all the money that we could raise to help build tourism. I believe that we've also spent a lot of money here in Murphy's to build tourism. Now, if you look around to see what is happening, every town that I see is after branding itself. How do we identify ourselves? How do we differentiate ourselves to bring tourism into the town, into the area? Stockton just spent umpteen dollars. I mean, you wouldn't even want to know how many dollars they are spending on consultants to try and build an identity for Stockton. They're having a big tourism, agritourism meeting in Fairgrounds, I think, this next Saturday, on how do we build tourism in the agricultural sector. All of these rural counties have to think about, where is your source of income? Where is the economy coming from? And in the 40s, it was timber, lumber, cattle. But today, the only thing we have in these small rural counties is agritourism and tourism. We have managed to build a very fine boutique wine industry here, which has helped prosper the whole area. And it does a lot of things. When you have tourism, people come, bring money, leave money, they go back, and you don't have to build all the infrastructure, the schools, the welfare, everything else that goes along with it. And so what we have to really work on is, how do we maintain our branding, our position as a neat, it's already there, it is a neat tourism town. We look how many restaurants have come into this community in the last 10 years. Look how many wineries, we've gone from 2 or 3 to 20-some wineries now. We have really built an agritourism community. Now, and I have nothing against the Murphy's Hotel or any people on this. It is a case of, you put a big neon sign out there in the middle of Murphy's, you have just totally changed the character of town. And I could just see at the other end of town another neon sign going up, and then you've now blown the town. You've now changed the entire character of the town. And I'm sorry I didn't get involved earlier. I didn't realize, I thought it was something that was just going to go away. But I feel very passionate about what effect it can have on Murphy's and your whole county, because your county's facing the same problem. How do we bring economic income into the county? So I would propose, as a possible program, is let's set up a community town hall meeting. Let's bring in some of the experts that have been working on rural tourism. Let's bring them in, have a town hall meeting, let everybody give the pros and the cons of it. And then if the people want to have neon signs, fine. If they decide it's in the best economic interest of the whole area, then let's get some really nice signs, but not neon and out in the street. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take questions if you have.
Anybody that got any questions?
Sure.
Yes, Supervisor Thomas.
Mr. Katz, I'm very much an advocate of communities having self-determination be part of their hopes and aspirations. trouble here with the fact that I see evidence that 80 of the businesses that are on Main Street have said, we endorse this sign, we think it'd be a good idea, we have no objections, in fact, we're very much in support of it. We have, so far, we've got 3 people, including the county supervisor, who incidentally, I'll ask this question later, but there are very few people that are coming here very late in the game. You heard me say a moment ago that the sign, in my mind, has been approved. We're just talking about where the methodology for putting it up. This is not a public hearing to discuss the pros and cons of a neon sign.
I heard you, Russ, and I understand. I apologize. I just didn't realize early on that this thing would ever go anywhere. And so it's got past me, and I apologize for that. But I do believe that if you have a meeting with those same 80 people that have signed, because they all want to be friends with the Hotel Astoria, I don't blame them. They would sign because of that. But I think if they sit down and hear the pros and the cons of what they're doing to their town, I think you might see a change in their mind.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? I think there's 2 more that want to speak out of this. Next.
I completely agree with John Gals. I never thought this would go this far either. I thought that it would stop a long time ago. When the neon sign downtown Murphy's is just a bad idea. It would change the character of that locale. I thought it would stop at the planning commission. It wasn't stopped there. I guess that reflects on the choices of the planning commission. I thought it could stop today. I hope it is. But I see 3 people take Tom up there. Hopefully they'll make a decision not based on personal rules or something. Thank you.
I would hope that everybody in this audience would recognize that this board, while it has differences of opinion and likes and dislikes about one another, makes up its mind based on the facts before it, and that we have done everything that we can to not be personal in our voting patterns, which can be evidenced by a review of the record that shows that many of us vote with Tom on some issues and not on others. I think it's an unfortunate insertion into this dialogue.
Thank you.
And I think you defend yourself. Thank you.
And yes, you've been trying to write.
I came here because of the fact that I'm under the same impression that the sign, that this meeting is not about the sign, it's about the logistics of where the sign will be placed. Is that correct?
It is what is before us today, and I would actually like to remind everybody, is a question of whether or not an encroachment permit is to be made. It would require 3 findings. It does not deal at all with the question of the nature of the sign. It has to do with the encroachment permit to put it out.
Well, that was my understanding.
And maybe the county council would like to further define what's before us.
Well, just point out a couple of things. First of all, the decision by the planning commission is not binding on your board, and the evidence regarding the nature and the structure of the sign would be relevant to the 3rd finding. The question of whether it's definite to our public interest. So, I guess it's fair to the board to consider.
Thank you.
So even though the decision, even though the sign has been technically approved, it's still open for conversation. Is that what you're saying?
That certain aspects of the sign may, I believe, if I can interpret, may be detrimental to the public interest, safety, health, and welfare, or injurious to another party. I think that's the criteria number 3 is what admits that discussion into play here.
Well, then, what I would like to express is the fact that no one really appreciates me on, especially contrary to what has been said here today, business is very difficult. Not difficult, it's very difficult. Anyone who has their own business has to look at areas and opportunities to maintain their business. Each month they have overheads that they have to meet. It's not a paycheck, it's a business. How far we're allowed to stretch that investigation, of course, is determined by many factors. County certainly one of them. I happen to think that neon is giving way to the beauty of neon in the 30s and 40s. Maybe we have somebody up there smoking a cigarette and blowing smoke up or something. But I think neon is past its time. It really has passed its time. But if you look at Murphy's, and if you look at the historical district of Murphy's, which nobody really knows where that begins and ends, they really don't. Depends on what side of the argument they're on. But if you look at the old business that just has reopened the Nugget, for what it's worth, it has 11 neon signs. 11 in the buildings. Now, granted, they're attached to the inside of the windows, but they have every advertisement known to mankind for beer and whatever. Now, is this part of the historical development, or the historical area? And most certainly is. Because in order to come into Murphy's, you have 3 ways. And that happens to be, besides Murphy Gray Road, the Tom Bell Road is certainly one that brings people into Murphy's, brings it into the new development of Murphy's as well as the old part of Murphy's. Again, I do not like the thought of having a neon sign in Murphy's. But if my understanding is correct, and I really came here to talk about where it should be put, but if my understanding is correct, the sign is being done in a manner of historical value. I've talked to most all the retailers on Main Street. And again, it depends on how the question has been posed to them, if you've seen that enough. Some people have proposed that the question is, do you want neon in town? It's like that Chicken Little thing. I happen to think that if it's done well, in my opinion, if it's done well, I think it would be a very added attraction to the historical. I'm talking about the gold rush days, but I'm talking about the 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. The historical time of that particular hotel. That particular hotel is, whether we like to admit it, and some people don't, because of the old alchemy development and whatnot. That is the anchor to Murphy's. It's truly, truly the anchor to Murphy's. All shopping centers have an anchor store. This hotel is one. God forbid we ever lose this hotel, because we will lose our identity as far as the historical value of Murphy's. So I'm not asking for this board to make exceptions, but I'm also asking, but what I am asking the board to do is to take into consideration today, when businesses are very, very up against it, and will be for the next few years, to not necessarily make leeway, but to understand what an individual is doing with regards to his or her business. And what they're trying to do is to keep it alive, keep it profitable, keep their notes payable, keep their employees employed, and keeping the people that come into the community happy that they came and will be coming back. Every day, I'm on Main Street 6, 7 days a week. Every day people come into my stores or my restaurants and mention not only Ironstone, which of course is the number 1 mission, because it really, obviously woke this community out. But they also mention the historical value of the hotel, sometimes comically, sometimes with awe. But we can't lose this amazingly beautiful, historical, valuable asset to Murphy. That means finding the right type of value-added neon sign, depicting the history of the hotel, not the fact that you can get a drink there. I don't see why this should be a consideration. As to it blocking the traffic, if the traffic flows, I think that is very easy, should be very easy to accomplish. We have a group of people here in the government that certainly should be able to accomplish that. I think this has been taken into such a personal level that it's almost to a point don't want a neon sign in Murphy's, then you're gonna have to pass a law that there's no neon signs permitted. And that means the Nugget has to take their signs out, the bag lady has to take their signs out, the toy store has to take their signs out, the boutique store is gonna have to take their signs out. And it's gonna become it's gonna become a joke. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, look at this neon sign, not as we're gonna neon Murphy's, but that it could bring in a little nostalgia to a town that has had tremendous success since the Ironstone people came in. And we are now suffering from the tourism that are coming into town, because they are still coming. But if you walk around Main Street, you'll see that there's fewer bags. Rather than a case of wine, it's 2 bottles. So we really are feeling it. And the last thing we need is what Sonora is suffering with, and what Angels Canyon is suffering with, and that's doors that have nothing in them. And there are a number of businesses on Main Street today that in very few months, if things don't change, there will be empty storefronts. So please take that into consideration. You know that you're more than capable of finding a proper place for this sign where it won't interfere with the flow of traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Before Citizen Tryon returns to the, is there anybody else who wishes to speak who has not yet spoken? And we, of course, will have the applicant or appellant come back as well. All right, please step forward.
I'd just like to answer some of the questions, and I'll start with Supervisor Thomas's comments, which I believe to be wholly inaccurate. Because if you were to grant this variance request, that would be changing the rules of the game in the middle of the field. Changing the rules in the middle of the game. As Ron pointed out, he said, well, neon's permitted at Murphy's, but we need to pass an ordinance that says, no, you can't have neon in Murphy's. Well, we have an ordinance right here. Here's the county code. You cannot have a sign like this out in the county right of way. We have it. The question is are the terms of a variance met? I'm a little different than Don. I don't mind neon on the inside of the buildings. I look at that more as a private property right, but there is no private property right in the county right of way. That's county ground. That's not a private citizen ground. So to answer Ron's question, we have the ordinance. To elaborate, what I would call elaborating further on Supervisor Thomas's comments and on County Council's comments, I believe the neon sign per se, along with any sign, is before the board at this time. If you look at the 3 conditions for the variance, let me read them again. First, that the applicant will be substantially damaged by the refusal to grant the permit as requested. You know, you could obviously make a determination that a different request would have a different outcome. So as requested, I think does place neon very much before the board as far as a consequence of this variance request. You go to item 2, that no other reasonable method. That tells you right there that you have alternatives to look at. You have alternative reasonable methods to entertain before you decide that this is the optimum method, I guess, or the best method that this board wishes to choose. That gives you nothing but discretion. You go down to item 3, that the granting of the permit will not be materially detrimental to the public interest. I think there's plenty of testimony, both by myself and the others that have followed me, that it is detrimental to the public interest. There will be a great detriment to where Murphy's is today and how you're going to define Murphy's basically going forward. So I think all of that is basically before you within the variance, within all 3 of those conditions of the variance request. Let me touch on a couple other comments. First off, let me just mentioned that this issue of having signs in the county right of way has come up before. When we did the Arbors project, at the four-way intersection there at the Nugget and the Davies store, where the Arbors project was, there were a lot of signs on a tree right there. And we had a lot of controversy about removing all those signs out of the county right of way when we did the Arbors project. They were not neon signs, they were wooden signs. And we removed them. They're no longer there in the county right of way. This is not unprecedented. The county has asserted this authority in the past, and has asserted this authority in Murphy's in the past, particularly in conjunction with the construction. Let me talk on a couple other points that Ron brought up, where he basically says that there's some sort of historical value to neon signs in Murphy's, particularly this neon sign in Murphy's, though it hasn't been there for 40 years. I would submit there is no historical value in Murphy's today for a neon sign that hasn't been there for 40 years any more than what we need for economic development in this county. Is more hydraulic mining, because we did that in the late 1800s, so let's fire up the water cannons. I mean, that makes no sense at all. You have to look at it on the merits of where we are today and what is in our best interest. Ron mentions about how, well, this is business enhancing. I think it's absolutely wrong. I think it will be business destroying. This is not a business enhancing action. If the board grants the variance, it will be very negative, in my opinion, to the businesses in Murphy's and to the growth of businesses in Murphy's. I will just like to, well, let's talk one other issue, and that is the City of Angels paid, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars for Roger Brooks to come in and do a branding for the City of Angels. The first thing he said for historical districts is you got to get rid of neon. So we got to get rid of neon in the historical districts if you want to have an historical district that will be prosperous and successful. And that's what he said. He reinforced it at a private dinner afterwards when I talked to him at some length on the issue. So now we come before us, oh, let's start introducing neon in the historical district of Murphy's. That makes no sense at all. At one of the candidate forums in Murphy's, I had a person come up afterwards, the neon sign came up as a question in the community forum, and the individual was from Nevada City, and he says, geez, Tom, I'm really for you. Let's not have Murphy's go neon. The first thing they had to do when they to clean up Nevada City and make Nevada City what it is today is to get rid of the neon signs. And he said, for God's sakes, let's not do that here in Murphy's. If you look at the Stockton Record from about 2 weeks ago, Dana's paper, they had a nice article on, I believe it was Brussels, and they were wanting to restore the historical district in Brussels. And then the article said the first thing they have to do is get rid of the neon signs. I mean, I don't understand why we're here. I don't understand how it could have possibly have gotten this far. It does not meet any of the conditions of the variance, none whatsoever of the variance. When you do this, you set a precedent. That means any business in Murphy can come out now and request a neon sign out in the county right away on a metal pole. And if the board's going to sit in here and decide what sign's beautiful and what sign isn't beautiful, and the board's going to decide, oh, we'll design the sign for you, etc., that's crazy. I mean, the board has absolutely, it's just playing with dynamite if you're going to get into that level of detail. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I would invite the appellants to come and answer any questions that may have come up that you wish to illuminate.
I'd like to bring this back to the issue. The issue is a denial of the permit for an encroachment permit to be able to stick the pole in the ground in the county right of way. This is not an issue about neon. Neon is allowed in the ordinance, but the ordinance says there's no blinking and no moving parts. This is not a lady whose legs are going over and closed like this with blinking lights. Neon is allowed in the ordinance, period. That's not the issue. The sign is not the issue. The sign has already been approved. This is not a variance. This is an appeal to the board to overrule the Public Works Department, who said that they had no alternative but to bring this before the board because the code says no advertising sign. Second of all, or third of all, or fourth of all, this is a non-conforming pre-existing legal sign. This is not something that anyone in the community of Murphys can put up. This is something that's been there for over 100 years. It's a continuous use. This is not about which sign has been there since 1881. This is about a continuous use of a sign, not the sign. There is no sign that's going to last for 150 years. You're going to have to change the sign. The original sign was a neon sign, so there you have it. That's historic. As far as not wanting another tree in the community, the Relief and Renewal Committee has said they do not want to replace this with another tree. They already have enough trees in Murphys. It's hard to see the signs that are up as it is with all the trees in Murphys. And I would like to read to you the petition that we have from the 80 businesses so you know what they signed. The petition says, I am in favor in bringing back a replica of the original Murphys Hotel sign from 1943. I feel that for this historic landmark and icon of Murphys, a sign of this nature is appropriate, and that the location should be visible from both sides of Main Street, as is the current sign. I understand that the tree holding up the current sign is over 100 years old and should be able to be replaced with a safer and tasteful support for the sign. I believe that this sign will be good for Murphys as well as the Murphys Hotel. The people who signed this are as follows: Murphys Hotel, Capture Winery, Murphys Motorcycle Company, Murphys Jewelry Company, Best Friends Consignment Shop, Studio California, Sacramento, Blue Groom, Dorrington Hotel, Knickknacks, Animal Kingdom Store, Country Flower Hutch, Sierra Sunwear, Laney's Closet, Villamia Antiques, Black Sheep Winery, Piazza, Alchemy, Next, Noto's Restaurant, Foothills Restaurant, Murphy's Inn Motel, Country 21 Sierra Properties, Murphy's Barbershop, The Corner Shop, Milliere Winery.
We have a list of all of these.
I would like to say that there are 80 businesses, so if there's a concern about what the businesses feel about this sign in Murphy's, I would like to put forward the petition and all those who signed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
We are in possession of that list, and it is quite extensive.
Beth. There has been a suggestion here by a number of people that, by golly, if we approve this neon sign, that there's going to be a rush to the county to have everybody in town apply to have neon signs on poles in the right of way. Do you have any sense that that's likely to happen?
My sense is that people wanted this particular sign because it was a historic icon in Murphy's, and that it should be put back up. There was no indication to me that everybody was going to rush to do that, and as I said, this is a legal pre-existing non-conforming sign. Not everyone in Murphy's has a legal non-conforming pre-existing sign, so you can't put it up in the county right-of-way without permission. So we have one of those signs that's grandfathered in. The rest of the community may not have that.
Okay. Just for clarification, you have a tree there now. You have the sign that is attached to the tree. Is there anything that would prevent you this afternoon from going out and installing your neon sign on that tree?
Well, the tree is considered by the county and the planning department as a potential safety issue. They've required us to insure that tree to make sure that it doesn't fall over into Main Street. At this point, the tree has outlived its longevity. The longevity of that particular tree is 80 years old. It's over 100 years old. So we are trying to protect the community and Main Street by putting up an engineered pole that will be erected and be safe and decorative and continuous with our sign. And an erection of a pole for the sign. The sign's got to be on something. To put it on another tree is to be absurd.
But in reality, you could.
Well, would we have to grow the tree?
No. I mean, if the tree. I mean, maybe the tree's only going to last a week, but at least for a week that you have the ability to put your sign up on that tree. And, you know, what I'm just trying to impress upon the board is that the pole that you want to put in is exactly in the same footprint as the existing tree.
Yes.
Beth, when you said the original sign, that means the sign that's there now, not the sign that was there in the 40s and 50s, which is what is the legal non-conforming use. So are you saying, you said the original sign, that would be going back to the 1800s.
So for us, the verbiage is continuous use. It doesn't mean the same exact sign has been there, which is not true. The same exact sign has not been there. If this was not going to be admitted 40 years ago, you shouldn't have never have allowed another sign, a plywood sign, to be put in the place of the neon sign that's been there forever.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring this back for discussion. Before we do so, I want to just make sure that we have some clear basis for it. First, as I understand it, one of our number has recused himself from this vote. Is that a formal recusal, or was this done for the discussion?
That's up to the supervisor. I understood he recused himself.
Well, yes, I thought I heard that, but I wanted to make sure that we have that clear before we do
You're
so.
asking me or the supervisor?
Well, I would ask the supervisor.
Under the advice of county council, I have recused myself.
Okay, thank you. Which, as I understand it, means that if we were to grant the encroachment permit and uphold the appeal, that it would require 3 votes to do so. That if this were a 2-2, this would be essentially result in a denial of this. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right, we'll proceed on that basis. We would like to make.
I have some questions, Council.
Okay, let's go
Does
there.
the latitude, does the board have the latitude to waive the code or give direction to change the code? I I know the latter, and what about the former?
Obviously, the board can't waive the code. The code provides a procedure to grant the relief that's requested, but not to just disregard the code. You could always direct staff to bring back, change the code without being modified retroactively.
So given that we do not have the latitude to waive the code, then it's a moot point that we even vote on this. Because we can't waive the code, we cannot grant an encroachment permit in the county right of way for the pool.
Well, that depends on how the board makes the findings that are stuck in the appeal procedure.
There are 3 findings that were outlined here in this. We would have to find affirmatively in all 3 to be able to grant the encroachment permit.
I would also point out that the issue of pre-existing non-conforming use is really a doctrine, a legal doctrine that applies to private property, to zoning issues, and to issues that don't conform to zoning regulations on private property. There's no entitlement established on public property by a pre-existing use. But that doesn't change the issue of the 3 findings that you're asked to make in order to grant relief.
Basically, it boils down to 3 findings.
The 3 findings are what drive the decision. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, Supervisor. Are you complete with your questions, Supervisor?
I don't know.
Okay, well, reserve right for future questions, but let's move to Supervisor Thomas.
Okay, well, let's bring this back to some semblance of reality. And when you're talking about the county right of way, that there's an inherent that the discussion should be concerning itself with traffic flow, with obstructions to visibility and the likes of those things. And clearly, we had a situation here some months ago where we forced a guy to take down some concrete columns and fencing that was out in the right of way because it was an obstruction to the safety of that street. It was in the right of way, so we had to take it out. Now, in my mind, this has no similarity whatsoever because you have a situation where the county right of way is at the front wall of the buildings of that town. Now, is it even remotely realistic that we're going to ask people to take all the sidewalks that extend into the public right of way, to remove them? Are we going to ask the tree league to take out the trees that are in the right of way? No. So what harm is there in approving a replacement of the tree that's holding up the sign or the pole that will hold up the sign in exactly the same location, that is not offering any additional restriction to the free flow and safe flow of traffic, pedestrian traffic. There are even some lovely clay planters and stuff out in this area that stick out beyond where this pole is proposed to go. So that I don't know, Supervisor Callaway, where you're going with this right-of-way issue. If you're suggesting that by putting that pole there, that it's going to somehow make the situation any less safe than it is today, then I would submit to you that that's not the case at all. On the issue of whether Supervisor Tryon is going to vote on this thing, I mean, it seems very odd to me, extremely odd, that the ruling here that says that a decision maker's participation in a quasi-judicial matter, you're supposed to not participate in that. So, learned counsel is the fact that Supervisor Tryon is continuing to insert his opinions and he's not supposed to participate because he's prejudged this matter. So his continued clutching at trying to grab this thing back from the goal line at the Planning Commission and then again here, is this participation? Just like a clarification on whether his involvement here constitutes participation, and if it does constitute participation, I want to lodge a personal complaint on that. It's offensive.
There are some conflicts rules that are statutory and are based on a financial interest. Those are broad and they preclude not just voting but participation even in the discussion. Those do not apply to this situation. This is the so-called common law rule of conflict of interest, and it doesn't deprive the supervisor of his free speech rights to make comments on the issue. So I think that the rule here is clear that it may preclude his vote, but not his public comment participation in the discussion.
Thank you.
Any other questions or procedural matters before we get into the substance of this encroachment appeal? All right. Which supervisor would like to speak first? Maria, do you have any other questions before we proceed? All right. Who would like to comment on your position on that?
This issue for me, this is, I hate to use this word because it will evoke some feelings in me that I don't have, but it's not that complicated. I hate to use the word that it's simple, but maybe. By that I don't mean that it's easy at all. So, I've listened to the arguments on both sides of the issue, and I understand the emotion involved here. And I have respect for everybody who has made comments here, and merits those comments. However, I have to say that I agree with the applicant here, and the reason for that is the fact that the sign has been there one way or another for over 100 years. Mr. Glass made reference to how hard, difficult time businesses are having. Certainly wouldn't want a business to stop their advertising or reduce their advertising. Actually didn't realize that neon was going to be the largest issue here today. It seems to be. Neon is, for lack of a better term, I guess Art Deco, but it is some historical value in itself, depending on what year both decide is historical, which is modern. Those signs are pretty common if they're done tastefully. I don't see any argument with them. You're right, I would not want to see a big flashing Las Vegas type sign out on the Main Street of Murphy's, that's for darn sure. Most of the towns in this county have neon signs. How many of them stick out into the right of way? I have no idea. But those of you that are at least my age know that 30, 40 listed in this county, I can't think of one of those town sites that's not historical. So obviously, all these towns are historical. They've gone through various phases of development, advertising, business, and criteria that they have to meet to be in business like that. The issue for me today is the appeal for the variance to have a sign in the county right of way. And based on the evidence that we've heard here today, I believe that there has been a sign in the county right of way for this particular business. And that's another thing. For me, this is not about personality as well. I think Supervisor Prime mentioned the rest of the businesses are going to say, I want to sign like Dorian. Well, I don't know if Dorian's going to own that business next year or who it is. That's not the issue. The issue is whether the Murphy's Hotel has a sign in the town of Murphy's. And so I think if the sign has been there long enough, that it has some historical validity to it, and it should stay there. For me, the biggest single issues are the three findings that this board is trying to evaluate and see if they apply here. The applicant will be substantially damaged by the refusal to grant the permit as requested. The permit is to have a sign in the right of way in roughly the exact same place it is right now. So to deny this would mean that they have to reduce their advertising and take their sign down. The sign has been there for 120 some years. So I would think that that is substantial damage. I don't know of a business, there may be one, but I don't know of a business that would not be damaged if their ability to advertise their business was restricted or taken away. No other reasonable method of obtaining the desired result is available except as proposed by the applicant. Well, to have a sign in that location is to have a sign in that location. No other sign is allowed to stick out there. I mean, you can't place it on a building and have the same effect unless, this is, I hate to sound facetious, but I guess you could imagine that a sign could levitate out there. If you're going to put a sign, where this sign has been all these years, there has to be some method of support for that sign, some method of support. The designs of that support and the sign itself are subject to review by the planning department and the planning commission. But to have a sign in that place, it has to have support. And I believe this appeal is to grant the encroachment permit to put an appropriate support there. The third one, granting the permit will not be materially detrimental to the public interest, safety, health, and welfare, or injurious to the property. Well, it's already been decided that the current support for that sign is dangerous, and so it cannot stay there. And the issue for me here is simply want to put an engineered or safe support for a sign that exists there, and the applicant has agreed to share that cost for the county. So, not about the sign for me, although I will say that after listening to what council has to say about that, I don't argue with the sign either, provided it's done in a tasteful way. The sign is about accepting the encroachment permit application. The petition that the applicant has published and brought to this board more than once is another evidence that the businesses that are on Main Street in Murphy's seem to be in support of this. There are nearly 80 businesses here, plus 30 residents, so it's not like there is a groundswell of disapproval for this. I guess that's pretty much how I feel about this. I believe that the applicant has made those findings.
Thank you, Supervisor Callaway.
Cut to the chase, I'm gonna deny the encroachment permit, and I think it was last night I was coming up Murfreesbury Road into Murphy's, about 8 o'clock, 8:30. And I saw the Murphy's Hotel sign with the pink lights, which I thank all the merchants for doing, pink lights for the month of October. And I kept thinking about today's issue before the board. issue is not the neon sign. I do not want a neon sign in Murphy's. The code allows a neon sign in Murphy's. So, you know, if Christine's mad about shoes, snacks, want to put their Christine mad about whatever, all the signs that are hanging, and they want to put neon, they can. If Murphy's decides they want to become an Art Deco town versus what they are now, then that can be up to the Murphy's Business Association to say that's how we want to be branded. But I don't think that's how Murphy's has developed their reputation. Tourism is the lifeblood of Murphy's. And they have an image and an identity, and I think the businesses are doing a wonderful job of promoting the community. As someone here earlier said, they've branded themselves. It's like Angels Camp is trying to find a brand, or Nevada City, or Sutter Creek, or Amador City, but that's not the issue before us. The issue before us is taking out a tree and putting in a bowl. And I don't like the precedent that is going to set. I mean, does it tie into my feeling on the neon side? Possibly. But there's a tree there now, and it's a dead tree, or soon to be dead tree, and it's a beautiful addition, and I don't want a metal pole there. I would rather see a tree there. I do not believe that the requirements that they will be substantially damaged by the refusal to grant the permit, and there's no other reasonable method of obtaining desirable results. And the things that Bill talked about. I mean, Bill was very eloquent, and I thought, yes, I would really like to agree with Supervisor Frondingham on this, but I can't. So getting back to something Russ said, the sign isn't the issue before us. The encroachment into the county right-of-way is, and replacing the tree with the pole is not acceptable to me, and I don't think that's the direction that Murphy should be going, is now putting poles in the county right-of-way for signs, whatever that might be. So I'm not voting for the encroachment permit. I feel bad this has been going on for 18 months. For the applicant, is emotionally charged. I'm trying to back away from that. This is the moment of decision making, and that's where mine is.
Thank you. Supervisor Thomas.
Okay, it was John Couse that came up and said that the issue is deeper than a sign at the hotel, and to me it very much is deeper, and it goes to whether we're open for business in Calaveras County. I, for one, do not want this county to continue to have the growing reputation that we, whether the planning commissioner or the planning department, or that we will change the rules in the middle of the game. I constantly hear people just bemoaning the fact that they applied to do something, they asked all the right questions, they were given responses that encouraged them to make an investment in this community or this county, and they are in this quagmire of having the rules changed in the middle of the game, and it's very distressful to me to have that happening, and I don't want to see it happen here. So I'm very much in agreement with Supervisor Claudino. I have no difficulty at all making the three findings.
Yes, it's up to me, and I have a number of comments to make before making my position known. Truthfully, I came in here with a variety of opinions mitigating in several directions. The first of which is that it appears to me that taste and the definition of historic appears to be in the eye of the beholder. I have an 18-year-old daughter who thinks my musical tastes are historic and bad. So I know that there are different views. And in as much as democracy matters, there are a number of different elements of that. People in a district elect somebody to represent them in matters like this, and the representative, while stepping down from this discussion, has been most articulate in his concerns about the sign. At the same time, it appears that almost every business, and particularly those businesses that are right adjacent in this historic town, which has already been described as one of our I guess our most beautiful and most prosperous towns in Calaveras, but that we have 80 people with businesses that appear to be nearly unanimous in the town, weighing in the other direction. We have an ordinance that permits neon signs, and we have a community that has done a whole lot of work on many other aspects of design review, and certainly has led this county in trying to brand itself, and rather effectively in my view. And yet there's nothing in the community plan and very little in the previous discussion before the planning commission that gives an indication other than the elected representative and the 80, as we try to weigh out where this community is on this. That's pretty much what we've got before us. As has been described by Supervisor Claudino, we seem to have a technical matter before us, which has grown into a much larger thing that is symbolic of our differences in taste and definitions of historic. And that this is something that we have in all of our communities. There are people who are newcomers, there are people who are old-timers, there's people who are very old-timers, and each may have a completely different idea of the meaning of neon. Personally, years ago when I first went through the O'Hare Airport and that section that goes, that tunnel that is all lit up with neon, I thought it was one of the most magical things I'd ever seen. Driving back from Montana last week, I went through Winnemucca, Wells, Sparks, where neon had been abused to the point of being discussed around. So there's a lot of different takes on this. My personal preference, and the thing that concerns me the most actually in this, is that we would be creating a precedent that would take something that I'm not sure is all that great looking and expand its use beyond the historic or the original site. And I would ask at this point of the county council whether it's possible for us to make a finding within the three categories that could be specific to this site, that would reference a location that has been used for signage in that place for over a certain number of years, with a tree that can no longer safely hold the sign, and that we would be making a decision in favor of the appeal based on the limited nature and findings, so that we would not be setting the precedent that a number of people have raised concerns about here. I share those concerns, and I want to make sure that whatever we do does not spark a proliferation before this community has had a chance. I don't know how they had that oversight and all the planning that's gone over there. I'm a little astonished not to be getting some clear instructions or written documents to guide us from Murphy's itself. But if this was to proceed, are there ways that our findings can limit the impact of that to this specific site, or as close to that as possible? We can't name the site and say that's the only thing, but are there conditions that would be so specific as to disallow proliferation?
Well, as a matter of law, what you decide on this is not precedent for other applications. As a practical matter, I suppose that it would be argued that by the next applicant, but that's the second request for exception. So my recommendation would be that if the court makes those findings, that if you vote to have the Public Works Department accept this appeal, you give the Public Works Department the opportunity to impose all its usual conditions on an encroachment permit that everybody else would get down, which would be indemnity, legality, and provision that the encroachment would be removed if circumstances change. The typical conditions that are applied to any permit. So that would be
But that's not binding on anyone else who chooses to ask for the same thing.
I don't see any way to make this binding one way or the other on a future applicant.
Let me try to explain what I'm trying to get at, which is I do not want anything that happens today to actually be an advantage for somebody trying to use it as a precedent. So that if we were to say very specifically and define it narrowly, it would make it less likely to be an effective use of the precedent.
I can't see how any future county councils could suggest that this decision has an effect on a future board and how it should make the findings, these three findings, in some future discrete situation.
All right. Well, I would hope that we would have findings that would be as specific and limiting as possible, and with that crafted, I would support the appeal. So I guess the question is, can we fashion such language? I'll be specific about how I see the three aspects. Regarding the no other reasonable method of obtaining, there have been other reasonable methods, but those have been denied, so they're not actually possible to use. So I think, for whatever reasons, and I'm not by our own administrative process. It's been going on
They were
for,
denied by the applicant, they refused it, not by the county.
as I understand it, there were conditions that we put into it that made it unviable. And that there were several iterations of this prior to now, which is one reason why it's gone so long. As regards to the granting of permit being materially detrimental to the public interest, again, the public interest has been expressed in divergent ways, but the preponderance of businesses right next door have supported doing this. On safety, I find that in health and welfare, I find that hanging a large sign from a dead tree or a dying tree is a safety problem. And that in fact this mitigates toward an improvement that at least nobody's going to get, with unfortunate timing, bonked by a sign. And as regard to injurious to other property, that's the debate that I discussed earlier. I would hope that we would have the community of Murphys make an equivalent. I think that the idea of having a community meeting and having, this is not my district, so I can't hold that, but I would suggest that one be held and that people determine what they'd like to do in the future, and if so, add that to their community plan so that we have a good idea of what the particular taste of the town as a whole is. Again, all I have is the expressed and written taste of the businesses surrounding it, and testimony here for public comment here. The hardest for me is the question of applicant being substantially damaged. And the applicant's concerned that they be noticed. They have a signage. We've heard a lot of arguments from different businesses, and this gets into real questions of community intent versus what I see as, to some extent, a property right, or things that have been brought to this board's attention as property and business right. And those things are often in conflict. I'm not surprised to see it once again take a new twist. But the signage, at least talking with the Chamber of Commerce and talking with business people, seems to be important in bringing in business and what image it conveys decide. Sometimes there's completely failed signage, sometimes it's actually repulsing the very people we're trying to attract. But I don't arrogate it to me, in the absence of ordinances to the contrary, to make that determination. So on the margins, I can also find for finding number one. I would request at this point that we would add those things that I have referred to strengthen the findings in relation to there not being indicators of a board will to spread neon throughout Murphy's.
I can do that, because I understand that the board would be directing me or us to add a paragraph that indicates that this decision is not intended to have any value as precedent in any future application, not intended to determine signage in the township of Murphy's, that sort of language.
That's a true statement anyway. This decision is only for this particular request, and if every request has to sign on its own, then we don't really need to put that in. And in terms of other neons, the only way we can get rid of that is to change the sign code in our zoning code.
I agree with that. As a strictly legal matter, there is no precedent value in what the board decides today. Just trying to put something here that may send that signal to some future applicant, if that helps.
I would not, the reason for this from my perspective, and to me this is not legally essential, but it is a conveyance to other boards, if any, and the community, that it is not the intent by our decision today to encourage or to proliferate the use of neon in signage. And that, so if anybody ever asks the intent of this board today, that would be well conveyed in the language of our findings.
Okay, so let me give an example. You have Christine's sign that comes out over the sidewalk. It says Christine's. And why do I know? Because they shop at Christine's. And so if Christine decides to take that sign and put in a neon that says Christine's, under county code, she can do that. She doesn't need a permit to do that. Adding that to this isn't going to change that. Mad About Shoes, same. Snack, same. The businesses along the same side where Ron's is, the jewelry store, they can all change their signs and put neon in without any permission from the county because our code says they can. So, you know, I don't like to add things that, in my opinion, really, what kind of message? The only message we can send is if we say that we want to change our code and effective today, we are not going to accept any more applications for neon signs in Calaveras County until we do our codes. Change our codes. That's the only way that has any need to it.
That's not accurate. Our code says no application will be accepted nor permitted. That's the whole thing, right here. And
But
all you have to do to not have neon is enforce the current code.
I want to be real careful that we not move out of recusal at the moment.
The language that's being discussed has no effect whatsoever on this applicant.
The
I'm
signs
happy
have
to add it if I'm directed by three or four of those board members.
There are two issues we're talking about. One is the ordinance that is countywide and discusses what kind of signage you can have and the limits there. The other is the appeal that's before us, which revolves around the three issues previously discussed. At this point, I would ask hold the board on the question of the addition of the language that I had proposed that needs something to my vote, and I'd be interested to see whether there's a majority on that.
I would like to see it added.
No.
I have to agree with Maria. I think that this issue before us today, the appeal of a public works decision to deny an application for an encroachment permit in the county right of way. I believe it was heard on the merits of the appeal. Now, I'm just concerned, Steve, about getting too much redundancy in our actions. I don't know what a board 10 years from now, 20 years from now is going to do. I don't think anybody here does. But hopefully they will hear and judge any appeal or any other matter that comes
comment from our administrator.
Yeah, just one point I wanted to offer as sort of this is that, at a minimum, board members' vote in support of this is expression enough of a finding that it's not necessary for the board to draft finding language that a yes or a no indicates the board members find that these conditions have been met. So you don't need it, it's not necessary to reach that.
I understand the requirements. I was looking for things beyond that measure and have failed at it. So at this point, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion for the applicant, to accept the applicant's appeal or approve the applicant's appeal of public works decision to deny the application on encroachment permit in the county right of way.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Again, could I ask you if that's subject to the typical, conditions that would be applied by, any other?
That's, include that language in the motion, yes.
Yeah. The second also applies to me.
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Passes on 3 to 1 with one recusal.